Hey folks, my guest today is going to be Freddy Mooney. Freddy is one of the best in the business as a coach in the sport of freestyle mogul skiing. And in this episode, we go through and discuss Freddy's career as an athlete and as a coach. Talk about his time on the US ski team and then transitioning into his role of coaching for Winter Park, the Canadian national team, and now his current role at Vail. Had a lot of fun with Freddy and really enjoyed him being able to take the time and have this conversation with me. I hope you folks enjoy this episode. Thanks.
Recording. Freddie, thank you so much for taking the time. We had to nail down some different time zones here, so I appreciate your patience with me here to be able to get the time to do this. But I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. My pleasure.
Um, so always from afar and in close, been a big admirer of yours. And one of the things in doing the research for this that I found so interesting was the fact that you're an Alp started out in Alpine. I mean,
Yeah,
just
man.
with your mom's history and how she's really been such a legend there in Winter Park, I figured you were just moguls like all the way, but no, you were late to the freestyle game.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, my dad was a racer. My dad was an Alpine
Okay.
racer, and my mom was a bumper from day one, right? They met in Killington back in the day. And like there weren't programs when I was young. There wasn't a, Devo mogul team. There was nothing for 5 to whatever 12, 13-year-old kids that was
Mhm.
in moguls. There just wasn't that freestyle program didn't exist. It was just older kids. They didn't even have programming for it. So, like, I did like with my mom, she started obviously the program at Winter Park, and the mountain was just our babysitter. So to do something, it was just what we did. We just got put in the program, and it was alpine racing. I think I started at I don't know 5 or 6, and raced until I was like 13 or 14, and then realized I was better at hitting bumps and jumps than I was at bashing gates. So made the switch.
And what was the passion about making the switch over into freestyle? I mean, realizing obviously you're a little bit better, but what was kind of the
Oh man,
transition?
honestly, it was just fun. Like
Mhm.
it was just based in fun. I didn't like waking up early in the morning. I didn't like putting on a speed suit. I didn't like slipping a course 4 times where I got to run it. And I met a couple of like the Brady Johnson, Jeremy Sweeney, the guys who you would know from Winter Park, and like they were then in that crowd. They were like the youngest of the mogul ski crowd, and I just kind of started meeting them from being around, and I was like, wait, you guys just go like ski, you just go free ski Mary Jane, and that's like you call that training, or you go build a jump and like learn how to do 360s, and that's training. Like that's just is what I want to do for fun. That's how I spend my time when I get to choose what I want to do. That's what I go do. So to to realize that that was actually a sport that I could get a I could stop racing and start just doing what I really wanted to do when I was free skiing anyway
Mhm.
was like a no brainer, right? And
Yeah. So
obviously,
how big was that like right when you started to get into it? Because I mean, you only really made that transition to freestyle like 14, and then you were on the ski team like 4 years later. I mean, it's pretty quick. Usually it's a much longer like build up into making the ski team. I mean, it's a short amount of time. So what was that like for you? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it was obviously, we all our reality is what we're exposed to, and for me, it
sure.
was like I was good at skiing, right? Like I knew how to
Hmm.
ski. I grew up with skis on my feet, and going free skiing, and we had a POW day rule, right? If there was more than 6 inches, we didn't have to go to school, and mom would take us, and we would just go free ski. So, like, I grew up skiing the Jane and skiing trees and jumping off every rock I could find. So, the transition was pretty natural, and
Hmm.
I came in and started bumping and learned how to ski with my feet together. And, I didn't have to learn how to go upside down. That was like, I think the downfall of my career was did never really learn properly how to flip and twist. Just now I learned how to coach it, but I don't think I could still do it.
I gotcha. Well, that didn't really happen until too much later, right? I mean, you were kind of
Yeah.
in that big transition time where you went from doing twisters into having to learn how to do flips on the fly and kind of, going into corks and everything else. I mean, you really had a big evolution in the sport like throughout your career, right?
Yeah, that was kind of right when I made the U.S. team for the first time in I think 99. And
Hmm.
then, I did like 1 year on the team and then 1 year off the team and then back on the team. And that was kind of, yeah, that was like right when we were starting to be able to flip and starting to realize that you had to learn how to, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's amazing. I coach kids that are water ramping from when they're like 5 years old now. And I think I water ramped for the first time at like 20.
Yeah, it's crazy how much that difference has happened too. I mean, kids are flipping so much earlier, and like nobody really does 360s anymore, it seems. They get right into flipping, and like it's funny, you ask like, you want to do 360? Like, I'd rather I'd rather flip. Do I have to spin? I mean, that's
Right.
me now. Like I would much rather flip off of something than be like, you want to go do a big 360 off that cliff. I'm like, I'd rather just flip it. If I have the choice, if those are my options, I'd rather just go with the flip.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you learn it, it's a more controllable axis to be rotating around, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So what was that time like on the ski team and kind of just through your career and your passion for sport? I mean, one of the things I've always known about you is you definitely love the extreme side of it and jumping off of stuff. I mean, I know you have that huge passion for mountain biking and kind of just that extreme. Also with like CrossFit too, staying fit and everything else, you kind of always seem to be pushing yourself and on the edge. So where would you say that kind of comes from? And
Man, I think it's just me. Like
yeah.
it's just me. I've jumped everything I've ever had, like cars, snowboards, bikes, dirt bikes, like anything. I wanted to figure out how to jump it. Like I wanted to go fast and be in the air. And so it was a pretty natural, like it just fit, and
Hmm.
I was probably a better dual skier because of that. Like I could get outside of my head a little bit and just kind of go for it.
Yeah.
Um, my time on the U.S. team is for me it was just really fun. Like it was amazing. I had the Olympic dream, right? Like I definitely had the Olympic dream and wanted to make it, but I don't know if I was necessarily built to like really really buckle down.
Hmm.
Um, I'm pretty fun loving. Like I love the adrenaline side of the sport, and I like to just kind of push things like that. So
Hmm.
that's maybe why I ended up going the get injured a bunch route as opposed to like being a little more successful with my actual skiing career. Um, but the friends that I made along the way and the opportunities to get to just travel and ski and competitively ski moguls and do it at a pretty high level it was amazing. Like that to me when you ask about like my time on the team, that was kind
Hmm.
of just like for me that was the take home was like the trips, the camaraderie, the amazing lifelong friends that I have from this sport is kind of what I take out of like that's what I got from being on the U.S. ski team for whatever 6 years.
So what was that transition like going into coaching? I mean, obviously your mom and dad, they, spent all that time. Your mom's the legend of Winter Park and building up that program. Just won coach of the year and still going at it. And so what was that kind of, did you know immediately after you were done? Like, did you take some time to try and be like, all right, let's see do I want to stay in skiing, or what was that kind of transition period like for you after you decided you wanted to be done competing?
Man, I was actually dead set on not being a ski coach. Like I didn't think I wanted to. I really didn't. Like I said, I was more of like a fun. I would go and kind of just play around. Like skiing to me was release. It was like getting to go and just have fun and do something that I really really love to do. And
Hmm.
it took me a while to realize that like sharing that passion is actually probably my biggest um, asset as a coach, right? Like I just love to ski. I love going and free skiing with the kids. I love going out and even like I'll still go, like you said, we have no snow here either, right? Right now
Hmm.
we're going and doing drills. Like I actually kind of like still, doing drills on my mogul skis and working with the kids and actually just enjoying the feeling of sliding around in the snow. But I didn't want to go that route. I was dead set. Like I was going to go to physical therapy school and I did my full undergrad at CU with a focus on sports science and
Hmm.
getting that and wanted to be a physical therapist. That was like my track, right? And then
Okay.
I don't know. I did free ski or free ride after I skied moguls. Like in whatever December. That's U.S. elections in December on 2005 when it was clear that I wasn't any chance to go to the Olympics was gone right at
Hmm.
2000. So I literally walked inside, hung up my skis, my mogul skis in their locker room, and like signed up for every free ride event I could, and just like went at it and did that for a couple of years and was kind of coaching on the side. And then what really kind of got me into it was the Jeff Burrows, the director of the competition center at Winter Park,
Hmm.
asked me in to have a meeting, and they needed a head coach of the moguls program. He also wanted to start a more comprehensive sports science program. Um,
Okay.
and they wanted to start a downhill mountain bike race series. So he kind of took like all three things that I'm passionate about and like wrapped them all up into one little package of a job and offered me just a job that I couldn't refuse. Right. Like, so I took and I would do the programming for the gym, all the workout programming for the snowboard, the alpine, and the freestyle teams at Winter Park. And then, I was like, I brought in a sports psych and I was able to really start what still remains to be a really successful and probably one of the flagship actual sports science programs that any of the clubs I think in the country run. They're really, really holistic with their approach to getting athletes uh, on to their top level coming out of Winter Park. And I got to start that, and then I got to start the Trestle Gravity Series, which is like one of the bigger bike park downhill race series on bikes in the summer. It's like I skied, I rode my bike, and I was in the gym, and I got paid for it. So that's kind of how I ended up coaching.
No, that's pretty sick. So how long did it take to kind of build that thing up? I mean, was that kind of a slow burn? I mean, it sounds like a lot of hands in the fire there, a lot of different things kind of going on to be able to deal with the sports science side. And obviously there's a lot of passion that you talk about in all those aspects. So, but it seems like that's a lot of hard work to kind of build that from the ground up.
Yeah, yeah, it was a lot. It was definitely a lot. I think one of the things that I think has helped me is I like to work hard. Like I'm probably a undiagnosed ADHD, right? Like I have to be going, I have to be doing something, and if I have something that I can focus that on, then I just am. This is just how I operate, right? Like
Yeah.
so, having something to take my focus and put it on and put my energies into was awesome. So when I was in the summer, I was like, I'd go out on my days off and go ride the chairlift and ride with downhill bikers and try and ask them, hey, have you done any races? What do you like about races? How do I've never done this before. How do I make a race series good? What would you like to see? Or when I was coaching, and obviously I was lucky enough to have been coached by some of the best too, like
Hmm.
having come through the US ski team, and the program at Winter Park was really, really strong. Um, I've had really good coaches. So coaching, the learning how to coach didn't take very long. So I feel like I just kind of have learned how to coach from being coached by some really, really phenomenal coaches. And
Sure.
it just becomes a little bit of regurgitation at first, and then learning how to teach. Like I'm a big reader, so like I read books on how people learn and how to teach kids, and that was probably the biggest learning curve for me going into coaching was actually like learning how to teach and how to
Hmm.
engage. Um, but I also connect with people pretty well, and I had again like a lot of my life has just been dumb luck. Like I had a really, really good group of athletes come into Winter Park like right at the time when I was starting to coach, right? Like I had a tremendously talented group of athletes that I got to work with. And it was pretty easy to get them to like a pretty high level, and the program started to see success, and then success built success and more people wanted to be involved in the program.
Yeah, it's always interesting, like and I'm sure it was made it easier for the athletes, just your overall passion, like when you're out there early and whether it's the ADHD or whatever it is, just
Right.
focusing in and kind of getting everybody going and, never afraid to pick up a shovel. It's always fun to see you on the other side, like, oh, Freddie's working. We gotta make sure, you put everybody, strike fear into everybody else on the hill, whether we're at Hood or whatever else, gotta make sure we're shoveling, getting everything ready for sure. Now, what was the transition like in going to the national team? Because I mean, that's another kind of big step in the career, right? You spend a good amount of time at Winter Park and you have that great connection with the kids and everything else. And then obviously you get the itch to want to go to the highest level.
Yeah, yeah. Though that was a really really cool time for me. Like that was
Hmm.
I honestly like I had applied for the U.S. team and didn't get a job at the whenever 2014, right? After the
After the
game
games.
2014 when the quadrennial shuffle happens and um, I just happened to be like I had just updated my resume and found out that there was a position open for the Canadian team. I knew very little about them aside from the fact that they, like always, were really good and they always had been really good. And they had a certain kid named Mikhail who I really, really was excited to get to work with a little bit, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and I went there just to learn. I went there as a student. I knew that I basically I was pretty green as a
Hmm.
coach. So I started full time in 2009 as a coach. So I had been a full time coach for 5 years and
Right.
was hired by the 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 biggest team in the world ever. Like it's honestly the best. As far as longevity and success through generations of skiers, like you can't argue with that. The Canadian team just continues to produce people. And I had skied against like the PAs of the world and watched how good they were, and I was really, really curious. So
Hmm.
I took that job just under Rob Kober as his assistant coach, and just I went there just to learn. Like I just wanted to see what was going on and be open to their system and different philosophies on skiing and how to ski and how to turn. Um, so it was, for me, I went into that like just really, really with an open mind. So
Hmm.
it was an easy transition,
Okay.
and I just sponged up like everything I could.
Now that curiosity you kind of talk about, I mean, was there any amount of when you get that choice and they you end up getting hired and everything else, is there any fear in there? Is there any fear of like the unknown, or is it more just like excitement and the curiosity of learning and being able to be better on the other side?
Yeah, it was definitely more just curiosity and excitement, and
Hmm.
you know, I think probably a part of like my whole drive towards an adrenaline sports is like fear is doesn't have a very prevalent presence in my brain. So like I don't really operate that way. Like I never
Sure.
kind of did. I've made plenty of bad decisions because of it, but it also has kind of who, who I am as a person. So I,
Hmm.
I really wasn't at all. I mean, I don't think I was even nervous. Like I was just really, really excited
Hmm.
and just kind of like amped up to take on like a new chapter.
Yeah. And like crazy chapter. I mean, you have some of the most dominant years there. I mean, kind of Mick as he gets into his own and the whole rest of the team, Phil, all the guys going off. I mean, so what is that what was a lot of that like once you kind of finally get in, and were they pretty receptive to have you in as a coach? And did that take a little bit? It's always one of those things to try and build that bond and that relationship with a bunch of those different athletes and different personalities, right? As you know, I mean, not everybody responds to the same style of coaching, so you got to be able to adapt and everything else. I mean, what was that learning curve for you, and what was that kind of experience like? As you say, you were pretty green on the start of it.
Yeah, the biggest change for me, or the biggest difference, was like I mean, you're coaching grown men, right? Like I was at
Hmm.
that point for that block. It was just the men's team that I was coaching. So
Hmm.
I think the youngest guy on the team would have been probably Robbie at like 17 or 18, right?
Okay.
Like these are men; these are not kids.
Right.
I didn't talk to anybody's parents. I didn't make phone calls. I didn't schedule, other than telling them what flight I was going to be on or where we were going to be and like what time to be in whatever country we were flying to. Right? Like I wasn't meeting them at the airport and making sure that they got through customs. Like I was, and so to me, it was more like learning how to coach as a like more of a colleague, right? Like
Hmm.
these, these are kids who have come through programs. They've had good coaches. They've had but probably arguably better coaches than me, right? Like they've had really good coaches. They've been through a great system, and they know how to ski, and learning how to work more with them as opposed to teaching them. It's a much more collaborative effort at that level where you're developing a friendship and a relationship that's based much more in support. You're a
Hmm.
support system. You're a part of their support system and someone to lean on and be there and be consistent for them versus be authoritative and you know setting rules or making sure that rules are being followed. You're more just kind of like they're at that point, you're 20 years old, like you choose whether or not you're going to follow the rules and learn the consequences on your own. But
Right.
and that, to me, like I really, really liked that. I really enjoyed the relationships that I was able to develop with those athletes as
Hmm.
really like you're way more on the same level.
Right. One of the things when I was doing the research for this that I thought was one of your quotes or whatever was being able to try to keep things a little bit more light and fun for those high level athletes when there's so many different long hours you kind of have to go through and all the travel when you're coming to places like Ruka here and you get on like four different planes and you're constantly in the darkness now and trying to be able to keep things light and fun, especially in those high pressure situations, right? Whether you're building for a world championships or you're trying to win the overall globe or getting ready for an Olympics. I mean, there's a lot of uh, pressure and kind of tension, and especially a lot of those different careers and how much effort and everything that goes into it. So being able to kind of keep things light and kind of have that bond with them that gets built for them to be able to go out and achieve their best, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, one of the things I was just kind of curious about in making that jump and that transition to the Canadian team, you talk about, them being one of the dominant over the generations. What was kind of going behind the curtain, to see the Wizard of Oz, what was kind of like, going over on the other side and kind of seeing how they operate and how they kind of run their system, or just for you, was there a lot of I mean, I know Rob's one of the best coaches there is, Jim. I mean, they really run a really tight ship, and it's fun to watch, and they've done such a great job over the years. So what kind of takeaways and things did you really learn that kind of helped you while you were still there, and then still kind of helps you now with your time at Vail?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great question. The biggest and most immediate noticeable thing that I learned from them was just the level of work and attention to detail, and not falling into the kind of slacker attitude. It's real easy as a ski coach to be done at the end of the day and like
Hmm.
go grab a beer and hang out and go find ways to fill your time, whatever it is. Ruka, you go cross country ski or go ride a fat bike or whatever it is, hop on Netflix. But like, you know, there's still work to be done, and you can kind of get as deep into it as you want to. And
Hmm.
Rob Rob was like a statistician.
Hmm.
We tracked everything. And, I felt like for me, it was like I was spending time in spreadsheets that were way more in depth than I would ever think that a mogul ski team would use, right?
Hmm.
Like, tracking every little bit of training and volumes and velocities and, just taking measurements on everything. And it's, they quantify everything.
Hmm.
You eliminate the amount of unknowns, by in a sport that's full of unknowns. The more things you can quantify and develop some sort of concept of control over, then the more you get empowered, right? Like
Hmm.
you can build a strong knowledge of what it takes and what other people are doing, and it makes it a much more like mathematical,
Okay.
scientific approach, a data-driven approach,
Hmm.
versus it's real easy as to kind of be almost like artistic, and you get a little too much into the I don't know, small nuances of ski technique that maybe don't necessarily, they might make a really really pretty skier, but they're not going to always make a person that's going to consistently stand on a podium,
Hmm.
right?
No,
So like
definitely.
stuff was like the biggest thing that I learned immediately. And now like I build spreadsheets all the time, trying to mimic the stuff that Coach Cover used to do.
Yeah, those it's interesting. You wouldn't think about it, but it makes sense. And as in most sports, like those analytics and everything that are so, that term gets used quite a bit now in sports and probably didn't exist like 10 years ago. I don't think people were talking too much about the analytics of baseball or football or anything else. And now most of those people
Right.
have them like on the
Yeah, we're playing
staff.
Moneyball.
Right. Playing Moneyball, absolutely. No, but it is really important and it really does just end up coming down to while it is a judge sport, right? You can be able to build in the analytics, the math, like the numbers are there to be able to work with, especially if you know what your athletes are doing on a given course and everything else. You can really start to break it down and find something measurable. It was always one of those things my dad would talk about even when I was like, 9, 10 years old, just getting into the sport. He's like, you know, make sure the coaches have a stopwatch. That's a pretty simple thing to like, at least you
Right.
know how fast you're going.
Yeah.
But now it's amazing to see the differences and being able to break that down because really is low hanging fruit, right? To be able to make those changes and
Mhm.
it's amazing to see the difference in the response from the athletes too when you're able to give them the reason why you're kind of having that data or whatever else and you can see their brains and minds start to think in a little bit of a different way and how to approach the mogul course or skiing or jumping or any of those different things, right?
Yeah, it's empowering, right? It's
Hmm.
incredibly empowering to feel like you have some element of control in what's going on. Like depending on how whatever deep you want to go, like is it
Hmm.
an illusion of control? But who cares? Like placebo me all day long if it helps, right? Like, do you feel like you have some control? Do you feel like you have a leg up on the person who goes before you or after you, or if it's duels across the gate? Like
Hmm.
and that was that kind of feeds right into the other no, really really obvious point that Rob Kober would drive in was like it was kind of not to go kung fu warrior dragon warrior, but like there's no secret sauce, there's no secret ingredient, right? Like
Hmm.
if if you are grinding harder and more often than anybody else, the odds that you're going to get better than them are significantly high, right?
Sure.
You don't catch up to anyone by running the same speed. You don't stay ahead by them running as faster than you. Like, how hard are you working? Are you doing everything in your power to make sure that you're doing the extra things that other people aren't? And like, that's where champions come from. That's where championships come from. And it really is kind of the basis of that program, or was for sure for a long time. It's just hard work, and nose to the grindstone, and
Hmm.
off. Like, it, immeasurably almost. I think that team was so good when the Phil and Mark and guys that really, really did. They reached the top of probably what their potential was consistently.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's such a great job. So talking about Rob, I mean, who are some of those other inspirations for you throughout kind of your career as an athlete and also as a coach or just in life? Like who are some of those people that really kind of inspired you or kind of gave you the drive that you've had?
Man, I mean, first has to be my mom. She for as far as skiing, like
Hmm.
the just the love of the sport. We had family days were ski days. When we
Hmm.
got to do things together, we were going skiing together. Um, I still, I go ski with my brother, I ski with my sister, I ski with my mom whenever I can. That was really that like it is my life. It's my lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that I try to, bring other people into and show them the joys of.
Hmm.
Um, and then, I had some really good coaches as I was a young mogul skier in that whatever it was, 4 or 5 years of becoming from racing to a mogul skier with like Scott McDaniel Scooter, who's still in Winter Park, and Dan Studer was awesome. He was
Hmm.
my coach through like my upper elite NORAM level, and essentially was. I mean, he's the coach that put me on the U.S. ski team and put a large. I think we had out of my group of like 4 or 5 friends. four or five of us all made the US ski team, right? Like back to back to back to back, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. Like we just kind of came in and took over.
Hmm.
Uh, Dan was amazing. And then once I made the team, like that whole staff, Liz McIntyre was unreal. She was probably the first that I ever worked with that really did a lot of analytics and
Okay.
started trying to be deeper. Like a missed opportunity in my life was to not pay more attention to that because I was just more caught up in the fact that I got to like go these cool places and go ski. You
Yeah.
know, like I was a bit of a slacker as far as that goes. Like I
Hmm.
would put in one pair of oval skis and one pair of fat skis because in case it snowed, I wanted to go free ski, right? Like
Hmm.
I definitely took full advantage of enjoying the circumstance I found myself in. I maybe would have been a little more successful had I dedicated myself a little more to the specifics of being a mogul skier as opposed to just wanting to go ski everywhere.
Sure.
But I don't think I would change it, you know.
Hmm.
But anyway, that but Liz was I would go sit and watch videos with Liz, and she was one of the pioneers, at least as far as I'm aware of, like learning the Dartfish program and true like side by side video analysis and trying to really show what was going on. I remember one time I went into her room and like sat down and she was showing me a video of Yanne and then had side by side with me and like I almost quit. I was like, "Dog, that's an unattainable goal." Like I guess I'll go put my big skis on tomorrow and go find some rocks to huck off of. But she was really really good. Um, and then yeah, Rob was awesome. Steve Omashal is a friggin' scientist when it comes to flipping and twisting mechanics. Dean Berkovich, he came in the second half of my career with the Canadians, and I learned an incredible amount from both of those guys as aerials coaches. And, something that I had kind of limited exposure to before going into the system.
Now, talking a little bit, you've always seemed pretty competitive to me. So what, just put it lightly. So where does that kind of competitive drive and like, did you always have that at an early age? I mean, is that, are you the youngest?
No, I'm the oldest.
You're the
I'm
oldest.
the
Okay.
oldest of
Okay. So
three.
you're
Yeah, I have
keeping the other siblings at bay then.
man, my poor brother, like he was 2.5 years younger than me, and I'm pretty sure I just beat the competitive drive I ride out of him like from day one because everything it was a race to the car, it was a race out of the car, it was a race to dinner and a race to finish dinner. Like yeah, I'm uber competitive, and I think that and I really do, like I enjoy it. I
Hmm.
love part of what I think when the Canadian team, when I really started to gel with them
Hmm.
was when we first started doing competitions, right? Because like on game day, I'm just a different person. Like I get so fired up and I can carry that energy. And I've learned to carry that energy well and in a healthy manner and not be, a little bit too much. I
Right.
mean, maybe I'm too much for some people. You'd have to ask the Canadian team. But the athletes that I was able to connect with, like I think that they were able to feed off of that. And I think that's one of the things that made me successful in that circumstance was just idea like any sport I ever played, I loved it. I loved football.
Hmm.
I loved putting on a helmet and smashing into people. I still go play hockey whenever I can. Like I Strava everything on my bike just because it's just me. Like I love to compete and race and try to be better.
Right. Have that competitive aspect now for sure. So what was, I mean, just talking into that a little bit. What was that like your first time kind of going to a bigger event with like the national team, whether it's first World Championships or whether it's that first Olympics in 2018? I mean, what was kind of that experience like with the competitive side and everything else and just kind of the different stage? Because I mean, World Cup, you've been on, you were already on that level as an athlete, have kind of seen some of the ins and out of that. And then coach's side, obviously it's a little bit of a different perspective and you're trying to manage the different personalities and athletes and trying to get them to achieve their best. But what's kind of that difference once you get to a World Championships or obviously like the Olympics and did you have good prep for yourself? I mean, did Rob kind of have you set up for that first Olympics or kind of give you some of the expectations and how different kind of was that when you actually get there and you're going through the different aspects of it.
So yeah, I mean, the first big event, the first World Championships I did would have been Austria.
Okay. Crutchburg.
Yep, yeah, and it was so fun. That was that was the Mick, Phil, and Mark actually swept um, duels that event, and that event was a tough one for a lot of people. I think the course was not that great. The snow was not that great. It was a bit of a drive. Where we were like there were a lot of I don't know, potentially frustrating circumstances that I
Hmm.
think a lot of people kind of fell into, and um, I'm just kind of perpetually positive. Like, it was I don't care. They had given us we had like the whole team was rocking these like brand new Audi wagons. Like I was like, oh, we go. I have to drive for 40 minutes in this thing every day. Like we're just gonna race to the hill. Like the competitive nature comes out again, right? But it was
Right.
fun. Like I was having fun. I was having a blast, and I was enjoying the time there. And I think that those guys like they bought into that, right? Like they
Hmm.
felt that, and
Hmm.
um, there was a course hold for some reason. I think it was visibility maybe or something, and like I was at the top, and you could just see people starting to stress. Like you could
Feel
feel
it. Yeah.
we're at world champs, and I was like, just like let's go over on the side. Like if you look around, right, people are stressing. If we just choose to not stress, like you already have a leg up, right?
Sure.
Let's just create a competitive advantage by deciding that this isn't a big deal, right? Like
Hmm.
it's still just mogul skiing. It might be world championships, but like we're still just going to go bounce down some moguls and hit a jump, like if they let us go, because they didn't know if the event was going to go off, and
Gotcha.
yeah, but, it's like we can stress about it or we could not, and like let other people stress, let them sit over in the corner and like eat all their anxiety, like or
Yep.
just have a little fun and stand outside and mess around a little bit and play. And that's kind of how that crew works too. Like Mick and Phil, they would be juggling a soccer ball in the morning, and we did that a bunch. And the crew, our strength and conditioning coach at the time, like we would let them do that. We would let them have their fun. We would let them have their kind of healthy outlets and their avenues to kind of disperse some of that anxiety and stress.
Right. Be
Um,
able to.
and it never really bothered me. I don't know if it's just because I am competitive that I really, really love the environment, but
Hmm.
I never really, like, I never, even myself, I don't think I ever really felt stressed about a competition. I just thought it was a competition. And I enjoyed that
Hmm.
kind of amplitude of energy or the multiplication of the energy that I think some people interpret as stress.
Hmm.
Um, and for me, it was just like, cool, this is like a high energy environment. Like, this is actually what I signed up for. Like, everybody's all beat up and like, you can feel it, right? You can feel the electricity in the air.
Sure.
Um, and then the first games, that's even just multiplied. And I just felt at home in it. Like, I loved it. I was there and I didn't feel any stress. And I think, to a large degree, that becomes relaxing for people who potentially could stress. Like
Sure.
I'm a pretty even keel, and I think that it's good for an athlete to have a coach or at least a person in their entourage to be able to latch onto and know that they have a rock when it feels stormy, right?
Sure. No, absolutely. That's got to be huge, especially because, as you say, some people don't respond to that like the same way, right? They can kind of, you call it that electricity. Some people probably, as you touched on at World Championships, like feel the tension. They're like, Freddie.
Yeah, as a coach, you can sabotage your athletes pretty damn quick if that starts to bug you. Like if you can't remain calm in that, then they're gonna feel that. They're gonna definitely feel that, and it's gonna magnify as it goes into them. So kind of whatever you're putting out, I think, is gonna be magnified into whatever your athletes are gonna feel it.
Mhm. Now, what was obviously 2018, Mick walks away with the gold. I mean, what was that kind of whole experience like after the fact, after, you've had your first quad with the team and you get that build and everything else in for results of those games? And I think Mark's with another fourth, right? Fourth in Sochi, and then you got a fourth in
Yeah.
2018 again. So I mean, you guys had some great results there, and kind of so what was that like?
It was it was pretty unreal. Like it
Hmm.
was it's hard for me to even think about it and put words to it. But it was amazing. We had those three, right? We had Mick, Mark, and Phil,
Hmm.
and Mark had been kind of my project. Like Mark basically had just worked with me for the entire summer. Like Rob just kind of gave Mark to me. He was like,
Hmm.
"This is you. I'm going to take." He took Mick and Phil, and he
Hmm.
did a lot of their primary work, and
Hmm.
I would do some kind of secondary stuff with them, and again be the guy like
Right.
the, that kind of supplementary character to not Rob. But
Hmm.
then Mark and I had we had an amazing relationship. Like the way that we just worked together, we were able to communicate and really, I'm really proud of the steps that Mark made in his skiing and his actual technique over that
Hmm.
summer and having the time to work with him. I think we did some really cool stuff, and it set him up to be that successful. It set him up to be fourth again, and that was huge. That was so cool. And Phil's journey through that games was incredible with the injury to his knee and
Hmm.
deciding to still come back and ski and do pretty damn well with for an ACL to still make finals and ski really well. And then once it came down to having just Mick, it was it was I was just there to like be Mick's homie, like I was Mick's, but as Rob was like there to coach, and I was like
Hmm.
be the guy, I could stand next to him and get whatever he needed, and he knew I was there. Like it was just that kind of emotional and having a presence of support and being a part of that was pretty special.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, it's great to be able to have that balance, right? And to be able to know, the different needs and everything else. I mean, Rob has his style, and then you have to go in and just be authentic and be you, and to be able to have that right balance to be able to get them to perform at their best, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And being aware of what he was feeling and needing and trying to give him whatever he needed in that instant.
Hmm. So then after 2018, you spent some more time there, and then what's kind of the next quad like for you?
It was so yeah. After that, they
Hmm.
brought the men's and women's teams together.
Kind of brought it in, right?
Yeah, we each kind of just wound up with like groups of athletes that we were primarily responsible for, and
Hmm.
I had a really cool um, experience with that too. Like I got to work with Carrie Ann a bunch,
Hmm.
and Laurent. Laurent was like my go-to. He was the one who ended up making the games as well, and you know we had a really cool relationship too. Like it was cool to be able to get that close to another person. Like you're literally living their dreams
Hmm.
with them and helping them in whatever they need as they go through that. And it was really cool. Like, and there was, some of the athletes, we had some mental health stuff going on, and I got to kind of be involved with some of that and some kind of burnout issues or not really wanting to be around and feeling a little overstressed and being able to kind of dabble in that a little bit and work with some
Hmm.
of the mental health professionals as well. And then like I worked pretty extensively with Chloe Dufour Lapointe, and
Hmm.
she had been, I think she had been counted out by a lot of people. They thought she was just kind of old and washed up and not really competitive anymore. And to help her kind of relight her fire and
Hmm.
she really redeveloped a passion for a sport that I don't know if she really cared that much about. And,
Yeah.
and that was really cool. Like it was really rewarding to
Hmm.
go with
Yeah.
her. So that was the brief synopsis of that 4 years.
And what kind of was that transition like? Because you have, right, the structure and the way it's set up for 2018, and then you kind of reintegrate the other side, getting female, male, kind of that all working back together again. And so was that a big transition and adaptation for you, or was that pretty just did that work pretty well together and the transition was pretty easy?
I think it was easy. It felt easy for me.
Hmm.
Um, again, adversity has never really bothered me. Like I didn't really. So the whole program went through. Like we basically were a bunch of dice that got shook up and tossed out to see where we were going to land.
Hmm.
Um, but I didn't. I just kind of. I think I embraced the transition and the new opportunity,
Hmm.
and just kind of kept rolling with the punches. And it, I don't. I don't remember it ever being anything that like stressed me or bothered me. It seemed pretty
Gotcha.
natural.
Hmm. And so speaking into that, I mean, obviously you go through and have to deal with COVID, as does everybody. But I mean, that whole transition through there and aspects of that, was the attitude pretty much the same? And we just have to roll with it. We got to deal with it. It is what it is. Stay positive towards it because I mean, you get that plunger jammed up your nose 20 times a day. I mean, that's pretty fun. So I guess what was that kind of adaptation and balance and change and obviously really, really hard times away from family, and then you have to either quarantine or be away and everything else. So, what was that like, and how did you adapt and be able to change with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was adversity, right? Like it
Hmm.
was probably the largest amount of adversity that anybody saw in that whole
Hmm.
phase as an Olympic athlete or coach or involved in any way in anything. Like our entire society was completely altered.
Hmm.
We were almost sheltered a little bit from it. Like it was okay,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was. It was. You can choose. Like it was the same thing as Kreisberg. Like you
Yeah.
can choose to let things stress you out, or you can choose to not.
Right.
Like it's your reality, right? Like your stress is your brain or your mind like not wanting to accept what reality is. So
Hmm.
you can accept your reality and figure out a way to work with it, or you can not. And if you choose not to, then like welcome to stress and anxiety.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it for sure. Now, what was the transition like after 2022 and then kind of decide, I mean, you have a great 8 years with the national team, getting to travel all around, and then what's kind of the decision to pull back a little bit and go back to Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, a bit of it was made for me. I think I'm not sure my contract was going to get renewed anyway.
Uh,
Some differences of opinion with
mhm,
um, some of the people in the Canadian program. So I'm not sure that that would have been done, but potentially. But I was kind of ready to spend a little more time with my daughter. That was the largest motivating factor for that one. Like
mhm,
at that point, she was 13. She was going to be 13. So I felt really strongly that like at that age, it's really important for a female in particular to have a strong connection. We have a great relationship. We've done, skiing, mountain biking, everything, surfing together
mhm,
for as long as she's existed. So um, it was really important to me to take a little bit more of a front seat in her life for this part of her life. So that was kind of it. And I was looking at more, stuff to do more locally, be more in Colorado.
mhm,
Um, Her mom wound up moving to Vail, so that was like that's how I found myself in Vail was just to be near her. She was really my only motivating factor to end up where I am. So it's kind of the decision was made all based on her, but a lot of things kind of fell into place
mhm.
in my life as well once I kind of decided to roll with that one.
Right, and then make the choice. I mean, Vail obviously just one of the flagship programs in the country, and being able to work with John Dowling and that whole crew there. I mean, that thing's a well-oiled machine, and watching from kind of afar, on the World Cup tour and everything last year. I mean, you got young kids coming all over the place. Who is it? Porter Huff, isn't he? From Vail, right? He's pretty young too, isn't he? I mean, you guys got a whole laundry list of kids through there.
We have a posse. We have a
Hmm.
pretty strong group right now.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like
Yeah.
from.
And, coming to work with John was another, it was a curiosity thing. Again,
Mhm.
similar to the Canadian team, like John's been putting athletes on the US team for as long as I've been involved in the sport.
Hmm.
Like when he was coaching Breck, I always knew who he was, even from Winter Park, and he always had these athletes that would come from wherever, and it seemed like wherever they came from, they ended up going on to the U.S. ski team. Like the
Yeah.
did Westerlin. Like he just kept having these athletes show up, and then they were on the U.S. ski team. It was like his success rate was really really high,
Hmm.
and there was definitely some curiosity there as well. So, and it was cool. It was cool to come and we worked together pretty well. I think it's been really good. I mean, he trusted me from, I think, essentially from day one. I think he knew what I was capable of, and he trusted my coaching and my ability to do my job. And I feel like I've held up my end for him. we have we have a pretty good fist group now, and now yeah, he's doing the private coaching thing and hanging out with you guys there in Ruka, and I'm looking forward to hear for him.
Hmm. And so looking forward to this upcoming season. I mean, you got a lot of great kids, and it should be pretty interesting to see how it all plays out with selections there. And look, like I said, watching, it seems like you guys got a really big crew and a good posse for the upcoming season. There was
Yeah,
one question I was just kind of curious about in kind of what we've gone over and talked about, and the successes and everything else. Those are always the fun things and everything to talk about. But there are a couple of those failures or setbacks you had through your either just kind of athletic career or coaching career that really um, propelled you forward to some of those future successes that you ended up having like later on. Because I'm always curious about, no one really likes to talk about the failures, but usually it's when we have those setbacks or those kind of letdowns that you are able to analyze or at least learn the most from. And then, like, looking back, okay, if I didn't have that mistake, that wouldn't have propelled these great successes and stuff that have kind of come forward.
yeah. I mean, for me, it was injuries. It was injuries
Injuries.
again.
Yeah. Hmm.
Right. Again, the consequence of not having that voice in your head that tells you something's a bad idea, like it didn't really exist. So I found myself in doctor's offices like a lot.
Hmm.
I think that actually part of my largest interest, I think, in originally wanting to go into physical therapy was
Hmm.
going to physical therapists for a long time. Yeah, I started at a pretty young age messing myself up, and like I tore my triceps tendon right off the bone in my elbow when I was 14 or 15 years old, and had to have like a full that's all. I have like permanent sutures in my elbow. um, I have that tendon stitched back on, and broken collarbone, wrist. Like I'm a little bit of a walking medical emergency, I guess. But coming through that, like you really learn what you can go through, and you do learn what you're capable of. And I learned resiliency and grit and hard work, and then I learned a lot about being in the gym. Like I learned a lot about how to properly work out, and how to really have a body that's built to last. And not so it's really really easy if you want to get in the gym to like focus on building muscle or size or
Hmm.
how it's in the mirror. But
Sure.
it's the more you learn about it, like the less important that stuff actually becomes. Um, and learning proper strength and conditioning and real programming that builds an athlete and builds a full holistic athlete versus a bodybuilder. Not to bag on bodybuilding, but
Hmm.
it's not great mobile skiers.
Right. No, definitely. And I feel like it's always one of those things, right? The setbacks of going through and that rehab is pretty lonely, right? You always, especially you're out of sight, out of mind, and you're sitting in a room doing like quad sets or whatever it is, trying to get that knee back or trying to do those small little exercises 3 times a day, 4 sets of 10, whatever it is, just slowly but surely while everyone else is outside getting to go play or compete or do some of those things. And you really are able to learn a lot in those dark times in the rehab room.
Yeah, man, it's a large amount of forced introspection.
No, definitely. Well, Freddie, thank you so much for taking the time and making this happen. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome. And next one we should do in person on the same time, so a little bit easier, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Good luck over there.
Thanks.